First, I have something important to say, please. It's something related to Rosh Chodesh. I understand that there's 23 years birthday today. And I know that Amuna and Shoshana Arawi, they've been here since the beginning, according to the first commercial. I've been here, B'schut Sarah Yudit, who sent me to Bat Hayin, where I met people from the Moshav and the Chevre, like Avram Maskowitz and Chana Rachel Fruman, who has an amazing book that just came out for the pleasure of peace. And what I would like to say now, I'm here maybe now, it's been 20 years. Wow. And there's a skula today, according to Rav Rafael Eitan, I think that's his Avitan, that according to the Rav Falaji, that there's a skula to give a nidava, to give a truma, tzedakah, of pach shkalim, which is 100 shekels, today, le'iloi nishmat, Rabbi Meir Beranes, because we all want Nisim, and now because we should all have a good kvittel zot Chanukah, and that we should all have a year of Parnasah and Nisim, and it's amazing. I really received today that today is Aleph Tevet, which is the Hilulah of Avram Avinu, which is the Ish HaChesed. And it's amazing how even in the Bnei Yisachar, they have a chapter of Kislev and Tevet together. Why? And apparently it's the same energy, because we're now bringing in the light of Hanukkah into the dark month of Tevet, which that should illuminate our anger. And so basically we have a whole month of manifesting the organuz and the miracles that we're praying for now in the month of Tevet. So I want to give my nidava of Pach Shkalim to the Rosh Chodesh because it's the Kiyum Torah. And I feel called Kiyum Torah. 80 and 20. Pach. 80 and 20. So Pach Shkalim for the continuation and the Hafatzat Ma'anotecha Achutza of all of the or that's coming here, of all the holy teachers, and I recommend that everybody give a Pach Shkalim, and this is a very good place to do it.
Jesse, take it. I met Jesse in the coffee party.
Nice commercial. Amen.
And once a week cup of coffee. And we had this really cute connection. So every week, but then she stopped working there. And then I don't know how I met you. Wow. No, Mom.
100.
Okay.
100.
Then
100. Oh, come on down. The prices, Leah. Woo. Amen. Oh, you women are amazing. We have the online donation cup.
This time we could just start because I bought a router. God knows what a router is.
Okay. We have electronic device.
See your followers. And the router was a lot of money. And I don't understand. I had to go there 3-4 times back to the room and to try to understand what am I doing. And I signed up. I hope my husband is not seeing this. I'm going to pay 50 shekels every month for 3 years. And that's 800 shekels. Yay!
More coming.
Okay, now just then
light. Coming down.
Jessie then told me what she's doing, and it's amazing. I wish I met Jessie like 60 years ago, 55 years ago, like maybe 40 years before she was born. But I wish I met her then, because now listen what she is doing, and she's doing workshops about it, and it's giving like another window of being a woman, and to make everything like a shade, like a beautiful necklace together, how we can be in touch with our body, with the cycle, with God,
Thank you, Leah. So I'm Jess. Shira Leah is my Hebrew name, and I teach menstrual cycle awareness and cycle alignment. And I first got into this work when I read for the first time that turns out women don't show up the same every day hormonally the way men do. And that's not common knowledge. Our hormonal cycle is 24 hours. So they show up in the world on a 24-hour clock, hormonally speaking, which affects a lot of their life. And this means they have quite subtle changes day to day. But then women, once we start menstruating until we go through menopause, we show up with much larger changes throughout our cycle. And understanding how these changes affect us can really help us show up in the world in a more, from a place of deeper knowing. And I also think a deeper connection to Hashem. I find this practice to be a practice that brings me closer to Hashem, just understanding how my hormones affect my mental energy, my physical energy, my emotional energy, my spiritual energy. So I'm going to talk to you today about just, you could divide up the cycle, even though it's around 28 days, you can divide it up into 4 phases. And this is based on the general hormonal trends. So like when your hormone levels are really low, and then when they're rising, and then when they're peaking, and then when they're falling. So those 4 inner seasons, which I'll talk about also in a second, really can help us understand ourselves better, understand how we're working underneath the surface. And I will speak a little bit at the end about what happens postmenopausally as well, because I know a lot of you are in that stage of life. And also it's actually super interesting. So, and this is also a great way to, there's a lot of stigma around periods. There's a lot of women hate their periods. A lot of women find pain in their periods and pain in their cycle and frustration and anger in the time leading up to their period and during their period. And I think when I found in my own experience, when I'm able to understand what each of these phases can teach me, when I learn that it's actually a cyclical pattern and I can expect to experience these changes each month, I actually find a lot of learning premenstrual time and a lot of release and a lot of love and pleasure in menstruation. And I think that once we all get collectively as women, I do believe that. So with that, I also will speak a little bit at the end about anger in general and how we're more likely to experience that specific emotion and the self-critique and the judgment of others right before our periods, and how we can learn to work with that energy and transform it into self-development instead of the anger and judgments. So to start off, I'm going to start with the phase of our cycle after our menstruation, even though menstruation is, of course, the birth and the death. I'm going to save that for the end for the sake of, you'll see. So if you start in the follicular phase, that's the rising energy phase. So that's the phase right after we finish bleeding, when our estrogen levels are rising and we're starting to feel more excited to go out in the world, where we're leaving our cocoon of menstruation and we're supported hormonally and physiologically to really go out there and to start giving again and to start wielding our agency in the world, hormonally speaking, physiologically speaking, energetically, spiritually. This is all happening on around day 6. If you go with the 28-day cycle, so day 1 is the day you begin bleeding. Day 6 is when our hormone levels are really, our estrogen's really starting to get higher, and it's going to continue higher and higher. And so this is our inner spring. This is the time to start this is a great time to start something new because it's more likely to stick if we start it now before we ovulate. Because ovulation, that release of the egg kind of solidifies whatever it is we're trying to do. So it's a really great practice to begin things in our follicular phase. So at day like 6 to day 12 or so. And this, this time is that rising energy. It's the inner maiden. That's the archetype. So it's this kind of youthful, exploratory, curious energy. And then we move on into the ovulatory phase, or the inner summer, or the mother energy, the full moon energy. And this is when our estrogen is peaked. Ovulation happens in the middle of the ovulatory phase. So this is when we're actually more magnetic and we're actually more attractive. Our features appear more symmetrical. They're obviously not more symmetrical, but they appear more symmetrical. And we just have, this is our peak of physical and mental energy in the world. So this is the time to like stay up really late, to go out, to plan things, to do. This is the peak of our masculine half. And I'll explain that, I guess, now. So the masculine.
What part of the cycle? The beginning?
This is the middle. So, I mean,
14
this
days?
is ovulation. So, yeah,
Okay.
day 14, again, women aren't like machines. So it's okay if you don't ovulate, but for the sake of this conversation, 28 days is the cycle. And remember, the ovulatory phase is the days surrounding ovulation. So the days leading up and then a few days after. And this is the peak of our masculine half. So the masculine attributes that we have, the doing, the giving, that agency, that is more
going out and grabbing a mate because we're fertile.
Yes, exactly. No, but that's really exactly what it is. It's because our bodies want to be fertilized on a biological level, that we can access that and put it into any creation. So we don't have to make the baby. We can make whatever baby we're trying to put out in the world. Like it doesn't have to be a human baby. And so that's actually exactly why. It's because the energy of our bodies are like, ooh, we have to attract a mate. We have to attract a mate. So that's why all of your whole being has that attractive energy. And that means you could, of course, look more attractive, but also it's a great time to manifest. It's a great time to use your power to attract whatever you want to attract during this during this inner summer. And then we go into the feminine half. So this is the fall, and this is the inner autumn, and this happens approximately on day like 19, 20 until around a day or so, the day before your period, day of your period. It's going to be different for every woman, and I'll explain how you can chart if you want to be more aware of this after. But so this phase can be really challenging for a lot of women. A lot of women experience a lot of challenges in the whole feminine half, being the premenstrual and the menstruation time. And I also believe that's because we do live in a world that really honors the masculine qualities. So once we tip over onto this feminine half, and our bodies are literally losing that, when estrogen drops, serotonin levels drop with estrogen. And we also lose we're not as physically alert. We're not as mentally alert. We're no longer as articulate. We fall into ourselves. This is the waning moon phase. This is the wise, wild woman phase. This inner autumn is this authentic, our authentic self asks us to show up. So anything that we're doing that doesn't align with what we actually want to be doing is going to be a problem here. We're going to be aware of it here. And that's why a lot of people break up with their partners during this phase. A lot of people get in a lot of arguments during this phase. A lot of people, find it more challenging with their spouses during this phase.
General socializing is much more difficult, but that's a good phase to be
Exactly. Your character towards, yeah, especially since you were just in your inner self. You could do everything and just play giving and living and like wheel this information can be so helpful because you could know, wait a minute, I feel like I'm on top of the world. I'm in my inner masculine, my inner mother is like that energy is here, but I know that my inner autumn's coming. So I'm gonna plan accordingly. And oftentimes, so many of my students will tell me that just by shifting that perspective, just by giving themselves time to rest, giving themselves time to step inward, to journal, and those things come more naturally. If you let it happen, journaling comes easier. Resting comes easier. Stepping into yourself, you're supported in that time for those things to come easier for you. So if you do allow that to happen and you do allow your internal wise, wild woman to come up and you honor that authentic you that needs to reflect, like making those little touches on your life, like looking at the big picture. It's the cyclical, the turn inward. If we're able to do that, we often don't suffer from the PMS, from the anger, from the critique, the self-critic, the judgments that come during this time. And that can be so helpful because so many women do suffer. And it makes sense because we live in a world where if we're pretending to be our inner summer woman, this mother figure all the time. And of course, I know it's more complicated when I'm not a mother yet, but like when you are a mother, to have to turn on in that way, you can still give yourself, even if it's 10 minutes, to give yourself this time, acknowledge it, that your body is asking you and is supporting you to be with yourself and to take a moment to listen to yourself. And it's so interesting because was Nalit her name? The woman who spoke before. Yes. Yeah, Nalit. Okay, so she really, when you were speaking, I was a little bit thinking about what I was going to be saying, and you brought up a lot of things, and like some of the things you said were so fitting for this time of the month. And I loved what you said about your daughter, saying if you can transform this anger, and now I'm going to use it more holistically, like with this whole period of time, this inner autumn, if you could transform this anger and this self-criticism and this judgments toward other people and whatever's coming up because it's more available at this time, if you could transform that and turn it into something beautiful, and you could then your period becomes this time of blissful release. And your period tends to show up the way you showed up in your inner autumn.
Right, exactly. This is so important, that part.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to move to menopause.
I just wanted to say one thing. The adverts want to show us also that women should always be like happy.
Inner summer.
Always be like summer with white clothing and no stains anywhere. So wear always these little panties. And if you have any problems with them prolapse, let's say, or if I check my number, like if you have urine incontinence or whatever, you just wear a little pad. You don't like. We always want to stay nice and nice because the men will like us in a way. We always be No, we don't like that. We don't have to be like that.
And we shouldn't be like that. We shouldn't fight it. And so like falling into your period should be blissful. You release oxytocin when you're on your period, and any painful period symptoms are actually, that's not normal. It's been normalized. It's not normal. And there's beautiful things you can do. You could talk to me after if you're interested. I also do teach an online course about all this. Yeah.
Skip spring.
What?
The spring state? Is there the spring state?
I started with the spring state. And that's like that's very easy. Most people have a great time in the inner spring and the inner summer because it's the masculine half and we live in a world that supports that. So follicular inner spring, yeah. So then, and yeah, menstruation, continue to rest, continue to lay back. So now we'll talk menopause. 2 more minutes. Great, because I don't know that much about menopause. So that's wonderful. So I do know
Should
this.
have made this a whole day, like a 2-day seminar for our anniversary.
So menopause, though, is interesting because ideally menopause will come after, even if you didn't know the specifics of what I just said while you were experiencing your menstruation, like while you were in your reproductive years. When you do reach menopause, if you were somewhat honoring that time, even if it was more subconscious, then you have access to all experience those heavy dips and those heavy like those chunks, those inner seasons, again, in a way like men don't have those crazy things. So you have this well of wisdom. This is the like wise crone figure. This is this woman who knows exactly her authentic self, and she gives it all to the world. She's able to be in any of those seasons whenever she wants it, and it's this like beautiful.
You say one thing, it opens up. You feel like it's a dam, like the water just bursting through. And whatever you didn't do now, this is the time to do all the things you always wanted to do. Like it gives us massive opportunity. You can't put it back in you. It gives you for a little bit more.
Totally.
And you just like it's urge.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So that I think is really, really beautiful. And yeah, I hope that resonated. And
So I want to say something. I always look for these calendars for my daughter, but it just says you're bleeding. You're not bleeding.
Totally. Thank
What's
you.
the rest?
Thank you. That's what I wanted to mention. The charting, really quick.
There's so many apps.
No, but this is great. This isn't an app, but I recommend doing it. Is just writing down the date, like that, today's the 16th of December, and then write down your cycle day, and then write down, if you want, you could even get fun and have the whole moon cycle, so you have all the moon phases there too, but you don't have to include that if you want something more simple, just in your notebook. So do the date, the day of your cycle day, and then a few words of how you're feeling emotionally, physically, mentally, like your libido, anything, just a couple of words, and keep doing that for at least 3 cycles. And then you'll see trends, and you'll be like, oh, day 23, I never really want to talk to my husband. So like, I'm going to prepare for that. Like, I'm going to maybe have less, like definitely not plan a date night then, but also like there are other things that we can do, or like, oh, I need to be supported by friends. It feels really good to be supported by friends on day 26. Like these things, of course, things in the world affect you too. You're not just your cycle, but you can really find a lot of self-awareness from using this chart. And I also recommend, if you have a journaling practice, to just write your cycle day next to the date. Like anyway, when you're journaling, just write like I do that, like day 20. And if you really want to see something cool, journal in red when you're bleeding, because that's when divine downloads your flat line, your hormones are super, super low. And ovulation is a whole different thing, but that's, in my opinion, like that's more of a deep connection with your husband. And then the bleed is this deeper connection with this divine, and you get this,
It's like a physical humbling, because you're like you're diminishing in a certain way.
And it's the birth too. So it's the death, but it's also the birth. So the birth is significant because the birth is all of those creative downloads, all those divine downloads are going to be birthed then. So don't do anything. Wield your energy for when you leave menstruation, but collect it. So that's a great time to journal. And if you journal in red, you'll kind of be like, whoa, then you could like look back and see more quickly.
That'd be really cute, the journal in colors, like when you're coming up and one color.
Oh yeah, to do the whole thing in colors, but you could start with red because that's easy.
But we need, there's a lot of apps. I've never seen an app that really talked about where you are hormonally, or
there is one actually.
Is there?
It's called I think it's called My Flow. It's the Elisa Vitti app. It's she wrote Woman Code. I don't remember what it's called, but it's it does say where you are hormonally, but it's not so. For those of you who might know the fertility awareness method, then you actually track, like, then you actually know where you are. It's not just a predictor. Most apps are just a predictor. They're like, oh, you have a 28-day cycle, so like you must be here. You had a 28-day cycle last month, so I'm gonna predict where you are this month, which isn't so accurate, but it is cool because she does have like, she has what foods you can eat to support that phase, what exercise you can do to support that phase. So that I think is called the My Flow app, but it's by Lisa Vitti, and she's head of Flow Living. So if you wanted to like.
Okay, any other questions? You can go to Jess, go to her
Oh, my
workshop.
website is valleyofmoons.com.
And there is something happening in the world. All those women like Neely Salem is doing a whole thing about femininity and sexuality. And it's like there's like something is going on. So I really think you should get together.
Oh yeah, I would love to.
That's unbelievable. So okay, everybody, here.
Thank you.
Nina, thank you.